Welcome back to A Brief History, everybody. Today we're talking about everyone's favorite green ogre, SHREK. Now, somebody once told me the world was going to roll me, but I wasn't the sharpest tool in the shed. Anyway, I digress. Let's talk about SHREK. Here he is. There's SHREK. He looks a little different, but this is his first appearance all the way back in 1990. Yeah, SHREK's a book character, written by a famous cartoonist for The New Yorker, William Steig, who named the character after the German word for fright, which is what SHREK means. Here's a quick rundown of SHREK in the book. SHREK's an ogre who lived with his parents, but he got too old and they kicked him out, so he had to go off on his own adventure. The book's kind of an anti-fairy tale, where it kind of has some similar tropes of a fairy tale, but not really. SHREK's an ugly creature who everyone's scared of, and even his gaze is so piercing that it can cook chicken, which is pretty funny, actually. Throughout the book, he finds himself in many challenges, most of which are solved by him just being gross and repugnant for the most part, which is pretty funny. It's a pretty funny book, and if you find it, I recommend reading it. It's pretty good. Unlike a traditional fairy tale hero, SHREK doesn't get a noble steed. Well, he does. He gets a donkey, a talking one, which he literally calls a jackass in the book itself, because he won't shut up about certain things. So you know where the character Donkey comes from now. He's in the book. Much like a traditional fairy tale, SHREK has to save a princess, but this time the princess is so ugly that she's been locked up away from the rest of the world, but SHREK just beats a knight by breathing on fire at him, because that's something that SHREK can do in the book. When SHREK enters the castle, he finds a mirror of himself, but also the disgustingly ugly princess. It's love at first sight, and because they are attracted to each other's grossness, they immediately get married. And that's it. That's the end of the book. It's a pretty unconventional book, but it's a very fun one to read as well, because it's so unique. The thing about this book is that as soon as it was published, a famous film director liked it so much that he bought the film rights to it, that director being Steven Spielberg. The film would have been animated by Amblin
someone else and singing fishy dancing.
You want my big bitch fight dinner with you?
Puts the teardrops in your eyes from secrets
I'm blind.
But not for long, because in the mid-90s, DreamWorks was co-founded by Spielberg, and they of course had an animation division, which actually became the most famous part about the DreamWorks studio. You always forget that they actually did other films, but most of the time DreamWorks for the animated films, thanks to SHREK. In 1995, they released a test footage of their early CGI department. The film was going to be a CGI hybrid film, which eventually ended up making it a CGI film. This test footage did not go over very well, and it ended up being lost in media for a very long time, until a couple years ago, and was found and re-released again. It is very bizarre. It looks more like his book counterpart, but looks really ugly and disgusting. This SHREK is known as Chris Farley SHREK, as SHREK was originally going to be played by Chris Farley. He recorded at least 80 to 90% of his dialogue in the film, before unfortunately passing away. His version of the film would have been a little bit different than the one we've got. He would have been in a character who's trying to prove that he's not a loser to his parents, and everyone else kind of makes fun of him, but he's a happy-go-lucky guy, like Chris Farley, who is paired up with the very cynical Princess Fiona, and Donkey, who is also there, but played by Eddie Murphy this time. The script would change a lot when they had recast him, because, well, it'd be kind of weird to have a character not be alive for the film, so they recast him with another SNL performer, Mike Myers.
I don't get it, SHREK. Why'd you just put some of that ogre stuff on him? You know, throttle him, lay siege to his fortress, grind his bones to make you break.
An entire village and put their heads on a plate, got the knife, cut open their spleen and drink their fluids. Does that sound good to you?
Getting SHREK, as they didn't think the film would do that well.
No, not really, no.
Because it was
For your information, there's a lot more.
The film had a lot more cloth and human characters in it for a CGI film, which was not something that a lot of other film studios did around this time period. So they had to innovate a lot with testing out fur, cloth,
This is my swamp, our swamp. Let go, Donkey, stubborn jackass.
They did for 2001,
Fine.
it looks pretty good. Characters like Fiona and Donkey were a lot harder to do, since Fiona has a long ponytail as well as a green dress, which had to be cloth mapped, as well as Donkey being entirely covered in fur.
Kick him to the curb.
Often
Don't mess with me. I'm the stand
pretty
master.
Fluffy. And
I've mastered the stand.
Rendering
I wish I had a
tests,
step
which is
right here, now.
It is pretty cool that DreamWorks has actually released a lot of their tests and other goofs they had in their when animating a film, which some kids saw and was kind of scared by because it is kind of creepy to look at. But as an animation fan, it's pretty cool to actually see stuff like that, and just glad that you
No, it's perfect. It just needs a few homey touches.
Like this. Well, the film is finally getting pieced together thanks to Mike Myers, who's actually active in the involvement of the film. He actually really liked the script.
You know what else everybody like? Parfait. Have you ever met a parfait? They say, hell no, I don't like no parfait. Parfaits are delicious.
No, you dense, irritating miniatures are like onions. End of story.
Bye-bye. His mom had a Scottish accent, and she read him very stories as a kid, he thought that would seem to work pretty well. Even the theme of the
Parfaits may be the most delicious thing on the whole damn planet.
You know,
worked out pretty well.
I preferred your
humming.
humming.
It cost a lot to reanimate.
Do you have a tissue or something? Because I'm making a mess.
The studio
Just the
ended
word
up
parfait
like
made me start slobbering.
a big thing for even doing it in the first place. Re-recording his lines and all that other stuff. From release in 2001, it ended up being a huge success. A lot of people loved the animation style, humor and storytelling, as well as characters. And it ended up being really big success, but pretty much on the map pretty much. As the horror films did not do nowhere near as good as this film. When this film came out, literally every other animated film was trying to be Shrek. Its humor focused the audiences of the early 2000s, and it still holds up way better than most of those films that are trying to be like it.
Shrek!
And when it really cemented the film as one of the first ever Best Animated Feature.
This is the first Academy Award nomination and the first Oscar.
But yeah, that was a big deal. The first ever Best Animated
Shrek employed state-of-the-art CGI animation. Producer Jeffrey Katzenberg for about a day or two.
Jimmy really think this could be Shrek content. What the hell do you think there? In 2004, DreamWorks released the sequel, Shrek 2, which came out at a very difficult time period. Shrek was really something popular for them. Shrek 2, however, saved the studio. Becoming their highest grossing film ever, still is. Inflation is around $1 billion. This film was fantastic. Shrek 2 did the impossible and improved on Shrek 1 in pretty much every possible way. The character's storyline, even animation. This film introduced the character of Puss in Boots, who would be so popular that he would have his own spin-off series.
I only really
and the
covered
character
my
was really merchandised at this point. There was merchandise of everything.
But this time I'm covering pretty much everything.
So much. There was quite a few, but this one literally had everything that you could possibly imagine with Shrek's green face on it.
So let's start with
Shrek goes on everything from M&M products to other
Ooh, look at that big yellow M&Ms over there.
That's the sun.
Yeah, I knew that.
Even car commercials, because what's better than advertising a car than saying you can get a free copy of Shrek 2 for purchase. That's actually pretty good. Shrek 2 is a great film. Shrek was even at theme parks. Early back in 2003, they introduced a Shrek ride at Universal Studios, both Orlando and Hollywood, which featured the Shrek 4D ride, which was a 4D experience. Basically, it was a 3D movie that was a little short thing that was originally going to be the plot of Shrek 2, but they decided that was not that great of a plot, so they made it to a little ride instead. And it featured all air blowing at you, random smells, and stuff like that, to stimulate the fact that you're right in the film, along with Shrek fighting the ghost of Lord Farquaad. Well, this ride is no longer at the Hollywood or Orlando parks, which is very sad. I'm going to cry a tear about it. There still exist in the Singapore park, which not only does it have the ride, but it has a recreation of the Far Far Away castle from Shrek 2 and Shrek the Third, kind of, in Shrek Forever After, technically speaking. It's unfortunate there's only one ride here, but that is extremely cool. And while his ride is gone, there is still Shrek stuff in the new DreamWorks Land section, which is for younger kids, unfortunately, so it's not really an actual ride experience. It's mostly for character meet and greets, which were pretty popular, the Shrek characters, especially their animatronic talking donkey. But it is neat to see some of the Shrek stuff, like Shrek's Swamp Hut. Let's talk about the actual history again. I got on a theme park tangent, didn't I? Well, the first two films are very much beloved. The third one was not so much. While it made a lot of money at the box office, a lot of fans, including myself, think it's not that great. You know, we have nostalgia for it. The film kind of tarnished the legacy of Shrek, as he kind of became an overly merchandised character that some people are getting a little tired of, thanks to the fact this film was pretty bad. Not helping this was Shrek Forever After, which some people didn't really gel with when it first came out. While it's gained a bit of a following nowadays, the film was pretty dark, and especially it came out the same time as Toy Story 3, they had our finale for a very famous animated series. People were just kind of tired of Shrek at this point. Not that it didn't make a lot of money, which it did, just that this film's tone and uniqueness definitely came a little too early. Probably would have worked better a couple years after. Because as I said, there's Shrek stuff that DreamWorks had for literally everything, including Christmas specials, Halloween stuff, literally everything you can imagine. There's a Shrek-related product of it. Though surprisingly, it seemed that DreamWorks decided to really put the franchise to rest. After milking it for all it's worth, Shrek Forever After was their final film. Well, kind of. A year later, they made a spin-off movie of the character Puss in Boots, which did okay. It's okay financially, it did okay critically, and it's just okay. It did enough to where it was granted a sequel, but the sequel came, well, 15 years after the original film came out, and no one really expected that to do any good, and at that point, like, who really cared, right? I'm going out of order here, but I gotta mention Puss in Boots: The Last Wish, the sequel to the spin-off of Shrek, did incredibly well critically and financially because of how fucking good this film is. It is fantastic. If you haven't seen it, go watch it. But this film is really great, even though it doesn't really have much to do with Shrek, so I'm going to skip this part for now. In the 2010s, since there really wasn't a whole lot of Shrek going on, it kind of ended in 2010, this happened. Shrek memes. Shrek in meme culture is a little bit too much of a topic for me to discuss right now, but basically in the 2010s, Shrek became the biggest character in meme thing in culture because, well, they didn't really do much to the character. He kind of looks funny, and some of the out of context things, well, they're just hilarious. And I think one of the biggest ones was this random post made called Shrek is Love, Shrek is Life on 4chan, which got animated into a famous YouTube video, which is, well, I'm not going to show it, but you can read it, and, yeah, it's pretty graphic. One of the biggest memes is Shrek with onions, as well as Shrek with All-Star, the song All-Star by Smash Mouth, who basically, they resented the fact that their most famous thing about them is the fact they're associated with the beginning of Shrek. But even though he became kind of a joke and a lot of the newer generation didn't really understand it, the old people, like me, still really respected the character, even though people say that Shrek is Drek, but they're wrong. And after years of not really doing much of the character, DreamWorks is finally making a Shrek 5, which gained a lot of traction online due to the fact that they had redesigned the characters to designs that don't look that great. But this film's coming out next year, and apparently not only that, a Donkey spin-off movie. Eddie Murphy's been talking about this for a while, but apparently there's going to be a Donkey spin-off movie. We'll see if it's good or not. So 30 years after his book's release and 20 years after the original movie release, Shrek is still a pop culture icon. And for better or worse, it's bizarre, right? All the films are for the most part pretty good. The meme stuff is just pretty bizarre. But you know what? Shrek he's a little unconventional and uncanny, but there's something about it that I think a lot of people like, especially from my generation, early 2000s. So anyway, that was the brief history of Shrek, and I don't know why I'm playing this for you, but thank you for watching. If you want to stay tuned for more stuff, yeah, thanks for watching.